We'll be bringing it back together now. I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch. So, I have the honor and the challenge of presenting right after we filled you all up with food, and it's kind of that nice drowsy late Monday morning going on, Monday afternoon. This afternoon we're chatting a little bit about resiliency. I'm hoping that topic in and of itself will keep you energized and engaged and enthusiastic. And if not, I'll just dance around a lot and we'll get you there too. So we settled on resiliency as this topic has really been one of the most requested over the last few years, and we thought it complemented the topic of ACEs very well. This is something that I will say, I don't claim to be an expert in resiliency, but it is something I've spent a lot of time this summer digging into, reading the research, reading several books about. So I'm hoping that I've gleaned a few ideas, a few very practical nuggets that you're able to take and actually implement into your practice. Because obviously, after all, this is the regional practice sessions. We want to give you skills to improve your practice. So as we're getting started, it's really difficult to talk about resiliency in a vacuum. You kind of need examples, you need subjects to think of with this. So on your paper, on your notes, I want you to just jot down some kind of challenging situation you're dealing with. Something that's going on, could be personal, could be professional, just something that when you think about it, it causes you even a little bit of stress. Hoping only need like 30 seconds. I'm hoping everybody has at least one thing that you're like, yeah, that gives me some stress. If people are really having tons of trouble with this, you are leading a pretty awesome life. Good job. Okay, as people are finishing that up, just quick, jumping over the objectives here. What all these words essentially come down to is we want you to feel comfortable talking about resiliency. We want to give you some ideas to both discuss this issue with clients and patients that you're working with, as well as ideas that you can either implement into your own life or at the very or suggest to your clients, to your patients, so that hopefully they can implement to improve their resiliency a little bit. So a quick think, talk, share. I've got 3 questions up here. If you would please, just to yourself at first, I'm going to give you 1 minute per question. Just think about what that question might mean, think up an answer, jot down a few ideas. Once you've gone through all 3 questions, find somebody very close to you, maybe sitting right next to you, who has also done, and just talk about your answers a little bit. And then we're going to share as a larger group. So, timer on. 30-second warning before we come back to a large group. 30 seconds. Okay, if we could bring it back together, please. I had you think about each of these questions. I had you talk about them with the people around you. Now sharing with a larger group. Let's focus on this first question. What is resilience? Who has something that either they themselves were like, I got this nailed down, I feel like I got a good idea on this, or if you were sitting next to somebody, you thought they had a great idea, you can volunteer the person next to you to talk. First question. Julie, do you have something you'd like to share?
So are we on the what is resilience? I put it's the ability to be able to bounce back or to be able to stay strong.
Okay, bouncing back. What else? Yeah. What was that? Coping skills. Excellent. We can shout them out. I can mime them back into the microphone for our guests at home. Give me 3 more answers. Letting stuff roll off your back. What was that? Overcoming things. One more. Being able to push through tough situations. Was there one thing you wanted to add, Karen? I thought you had a really long one. The ability to make good out of a tough situation. Okay. So a few of the trends that I noticed within that is being resilient doesn't mean nothing bad ever happens to you. It actually means the opposite. Bad things happen to you and you're able to rise above that. Second question, what makes a person resilient? What's that? If they have a strong will. Courage, belief in yourself. Life experiences. 3 more. I feel like this question's a lot easier for people. Having support systems, having external resources, that definitely makes it a little bit easier. Something positive? Is that what you said? Positive coping skills. Okay. 2 more. I'm sorry? Self-care. Flexibility. Excellent. So these are all positive traits, and I would argue that a lot of these are active traits. Some of them are a little bit more passive. You can't control how much resources you have available to you at all times. But a lot of these are active skills, things that you can practice, things that you can get better at. What about this third question? Why is this important to the work that you're doing? Yeah. So that you as a provider don't give up, because you're dealing with really challenging things day in, day out. Absolutely.
When you're able to identify what makes your client resilient, then you can help to harness that energy and help them progress.
Excellent. A few more. Mm-hmm.
Being aware of resiliency gives you another tool to be able to meet clients where they are.
So it's another tool in the toolbox, being aware that this is something that you can focus on. One more. I can stand here awkwardly all day. I mean, yeah. 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 So you're focusing on strengths as opposed to just, oh, I need to fix these 3 problems in your life. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much to everyone who shared. Back to the podium. So there were some excellent definitions or excellent answers to what is resiliency. If you look at the research, what research literature says about resiliency, it gets a lot more difficult because there actually is no one agreed upon definition for what resiliency is. Different research studies will actually describe it or define it differently depending on where you're looking. It makes doing a literature review on this super, super fun, if you're wondering. But despite there being no consensus on, or there is a consensus that this is an important trait, this does play a large role in how successful we are as human beings in achieving the goals we have. Everybody thinks, yes, that's absolutely true. Resiliency is important, but we're just not sure how to define it. We're not sure how to kind of put words to what this abstract idea is. A few of the common themes that if you dig into the research that come up, the idea of rising above, the idea of adaptation, adjustment, acknowledging that it is a dynamic process. What's resilient in one situation might not be resilient in another situation, acknowledging that different situations call for different needs. Another term that came up a couple times that I just loved it as a term, they define resiliency as ordinary magic, which I didn't totally understand at first, but if you dig into it a little bit further, they're essentially saying ordinary magic in the context of this person's in a situation that we're not sure how they're going to get out of it, but they're going to get out of it. They're going to overcome. We just don't know exactly how yet. We don't understand what's going on. We just know that it's going to work. I just found that to be very reassuring that there's this important force that we all have inside of us that really helps us overcome our obstacles, but we don't totally understand how it works day in, day out. And it's going to look a little bit different in each situation. This was how one study in particular, and this was a little bit larger one, so I wanted to make sure I did touch on it. They defined it as psychological factors that can buffer the impact of failure on distress. So again, it's not nothing bad ever happens to you. It's bad things happen to you and you still overcome it. 3 factors or 3 kind of personality characteristics that they felt really came into play or really shown among people who are resilient. Self-esteem, attributional style, I'll define that in a second, and low perfectionism. So low perfectionism, that does kind of make sense if you think about it. If you are stressed out about every single thing coming out just the right way, naturally you're going to be a little bit less resilient because you're going to have a little bit smaller window of what outcomes you're hoping for. Attributional style, at least as they defined it, was when something bad happens, how good are you at defining what the source or kind of the blame of that problem is? Essentially, they found that resilient people do a really good job not internalizing things. Maybe you got fired. Maybe that wasn't all your fault. Maybe it was not a great work environment and you just didn't mesh well with it. So attributional style is important because, again, if you take ownership on every single thing that happens in your life and you believe that it's all your fault, it's going to be a little bit harder to kind of build yourself out of that because bad things are going to happen. If you dig into a little bit of the research on resiliency and tobacco and alcohol use, it does come into play there as well. There was one study that looked at essentially smokers, ex-smokers, and never smokers, and these were all individuals who actually were seeking treatment for depression. They found essentially that ex-smokers demonstrated more resilient characteristics than current smokers, and never smokers demonstrated even more than ex-smokers. So essentially, I bring that up because it does come into play with substance abuse as well, both with tobacco as well as there is a high correlation between a dysregulated state caused by high stress as well as alcohol abuse and addiction. So it comes into play with both of these substances for both First Breath and My Baby and Me. With everybody in this room, I assume this is no huge surprise, right? This is like, oh yeah, the research confirms what we already kind of expected. If you look a little bit less on the clinical definitions and more just at kind of everyday definitions, this actually came up, and this mirrors pretty similar to some of the things that people shared. The capacity to recover quickly, a human ability to resume following disruptive change, and recovering from disruption. But again, just being aware, recovering is an active word. It doesn't mean that you're just suddenly better. It means that you take steps when something bad happens to either make yourself feel better or make the situation get better. Resiliency is a result of a set of active traits. Now these next couple slides, I've got wonderful graphs that I made up myself. I had to adapt from a paper. Essentially, I wanted a visual way of describing what resiliency might look like. So a little bit of a scenario. I'm just going to throw this out there. So think of every single day you kind of have emotional ups and downs, right? You have times when you're feeling a little bit more alert, a little bit more focused. Maybe you're standing up in front of a crowd of 30 people and you're feeling a little bit nervous. That's when you're going to be a little bit higher on this chart. And then you have times when you're going to be a little bit lower. You're a little more relaxed, you're a little more low-key, you're relaxed. Both of these are still within this kind of resilient zone. So let's just imagine a scenario. So hypothetically, we're starting on the far left as we're looking at this. You start out your day like normal. Let's just say you're driving to work. And then event occurs, event being the lightning bolt. Let's say your check engine light comes on. You're thinking, shoot, what could this mean? Like, has anybody ever had that happen? Like, you don't even know how long it's been on. You just noticed it, and heart starts maybe beating a little bit faster. We start getting a little bit more nervous. Like, am I even going to be safe to get to the next exit? Am I in danger right now? You're getting a little bit more anxious. You're a little bit more keyed in. You get to that next exit. Turns out there is a shop right there, right off the exit. Weirdest thing, right? Very convenient for the story, though. You stop at the shop, and this very nice, grandfatherly-looking gentleman walks out, and he says, yeah, I just saw one person do it. Whew. Things are going to be okay. Things start coming down a little bit. You're feeling a little more relaxed. Gentleman says, we're going to take a look at it. We'll get back to you in 30 minutes. We'll let you know what's going on. So when he says that, you're thinking, okay, this is going to get covered, but I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm starting to get nervous again. What if it's something that's really expensive? What if it's a big problem? How am I going to get to work tomorrow? How am I going to get to work the rest of this week? We're starting to get a little bit more anxious. He gets back to us. Turns out it's a minor problem. Then we start getting relaxed again. We can totally afford it. He's got a car he can loan to you for 2 days. He'll have the car back to you in no time. We're starting to feel even more relaxed, right? Like best possible situation, right? For having your check engine light come on. This is a normal and healthy way because, again, we're totally within this resilient zone. Overall, we're feeling good. Now let's look at a little bit different situation. Let's say, again, you are driving to work. Starting on the far left, an event occurs. Instead of check engine light, this time let's say hypothetically, you get in a car accident. It's a little more stressful, right? You're driving, totally legal, totally normal. Somebody runs the red light and just T-bones you. Instantly, like, stress level just skyrockets, right? Yeah? But everybody's safe, nobody's hurt, the police and the ambulance are there, like, things are getting resolved. You kind of explain what you think happened. Like, you're thinking, okay, it's gonna be okay, I've got insurance, it's not the end of the world. So again, you go from like heart pounding, I think I'm panicking, down to a little bit more relaxed right away. Because usually right after that first kind of traumatic situation, right after the initial one, like, maybe I'm the only one who's experienced this, but you feel just exhausted right afterwards? Like, no matter what, it was a big thing, my body was just in kind of fight or flight mode, and now I'm just kind of, take a few deep breaths. So you're relaxing yourself really quickly. Your body is just recovering from that really quickly. Now let's say hypothetical in this situation, we're getting down towards that first valley. You over here, the other driver, he's telling the police, no, she ran the red light. She's the fault. She's at fault here. And he has a passenger who's totally corroborating his story. So right now you're feeling more anxious again. You're like, this is unfair. They're the one that screwed up. How am I going to get in trouble for this? And again, stress levels just skyrocketing again. We're going above that line now, right? We are outside of that resilient zone. You're upset, you're frustrated. Just essentially a lot's going on. So the police are telling you, we can't resolve this today. We've taken everybody's statements. Everybody is safe, so that's a good thing. You're still feeling pretty keyed up. Your friend comes, they pick you up, they're going to take you into work. So you start, again, that exhaustion kind of sets in, and then you start realizing, like, shoot, this isn't going to be done tomorrow. This is going to take months to get it resolved. And I'm going to need lawyers, and it's just going to be a whole thing. And you start kind of hanging out. It's going in the negative direction. Valuable to note that there's both hyperactive and hypoactive ways to get out of that resilient zone. So in that moment where you are like panicking that this person is bold-faced lying to a police officer about what really happened, that's when you're getting into that irritability, hyperactivity, mania, pain, panic. There's just a lot going on. Are you very useful at solving problems in that situation? I'm seeing at least one head shake now. But you can also be on the lower end of this, that depression, disconnection, just feeling numb, feeling frozen. Acknowledging that both of these extremes are not healthy ways for you to deal with these challenges that are going on. And they're both outside of this mythical, magical, there's a graph, help you visualize it, resilient zone. So our goal really is to do one of two things, to either expand this resilient zone so it's bigger, or if we can't do that, to try to make it so we don't have quite as many sharp jumps and falls, but make them a little bit more gradual so that you're able to stay within that resilient zone. Does that make sense? Excellent. Now we're going to get into how to do that. So throughout the research, there was a number of characteristics. I tried to clump them together into cohesive ideas as best as I was able to, but these are essentially a series of traits that were both anecdotally as well as research found to be connected to individuals with high resiliency. They were having a challenge mindset, being socially connected, having a proactive approach, and being goal-oriented. And don't worry, we're going to go into each of these in depth. It's going to be super fun. There's activities and everything. So starting out with having a challenge mindset. Taking on a challenge mindset means seeing a situation as a challenge to be conquered instead of a threat. Now, I'm going to be the first to say this is not going to apply perfectly to all situations. There are things that are genuinely threats to your health and safety, and those should be viewed as threats. But there's also a lot of things that we worry about on a daily basis that we think are threats that really we could see as challenges. I have a stressful phone call to make. That's actually a challenge. That's not a threat. Nobody can hurt me through the telephone. Just acknowledging which ones are which and doing our best to treat the situation as it should be treated. When we address something through a challenge mindset, it changes our relationship with it. Instead of this is something that's going to hurt me, it's this is something I'm going to do battle with, and I'm going to be better because of it. Win or lose, I'm going to grow and gain from this situation. It also does a great job of adjusting your role in this narrative. When you tell the story of this challenge or of this situation that's going on that's causing you kind of stress, are you the survivor? Are you the person that this story is happening to? Or are you the hero of this story? How do you see yourself when you're telling that story? When you're talking to a coworker about this thing that's stressing you out at home? Are you the person that all of this is happening to? Or are you the person that is, this is happening to, but I'm going to get it? You don't have to like the challenge, but you have to believe you can handle it. Because if you don't think you can handle it, I'm just going to be the first to tell you, no, you can't. Like, if you've convinced yourself of that, you already convinced the most important person. And this was one study that brought in this challenge mindset. Essentially found that high school students with a challenge mindset were more likely to achieve higher grades, have better social skills, have lower levels of stress, and this was controlling for socioeconomic status. Challenge mindset, powerful thing, but how do we do it, you ask? So here we've got 4 activities today that get into this challenge mindset. I'm actually going to really only dig into 2 of these. So the first one, actually, Lauren is going to be passing out a quick worksheet we're going to walk through together. Again, remember I had you jot down some kind of challenge or difficulty you're dealing with. I want you to think about this. As Lauren's passing out a worksheet, it'll make perfect sense once you receive it. It's fairly straightforward. There's a series of statements on this worksheet. I want you to put a check mark next to the statement that you agree with. If you don't agree with it, just leave it blank. I don't want to rush anyone, so we'll give people 5 minutes to go through this. And I'm seeing a few people start to look up. No rush. If it's taking you a little bit longer, that's A-okay. I just wanted to put up this next slide. For those who have gone through it, you can score this sheet for yourself. I'm seeing pens set down. No rush for those who are still working. But did want to at least open it up. If anybody did have a comment. Was anybody surprised? Like, just show of hands. Were you surprised at your score? Can be positive or negative. Just you were surprised at how you responded. At least a few? Okay. And what that tells me is, for the most part, it seems like we have at least an idea of how we are responding to this situation. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Other question, and we can just do quick like nods or shakes. Do you think how you respond to this challenge that you're dealing with, whatever it is in your life, do you think it's how you respond to all challenges? Seeing a lot of shakes. Why not? One more time? Yeah, every situation's different. Just because I address a challenge in one area of my life as a challenge as opposed to a threat, I need to use a different word other than challenge. Too much of that word. Just because I address one obstacle in my life as a challenge as opposed to a threat doesn't mean that's how I'm going to respond to every single situation. And in some ways that can be powerful, because that means even if that situation, if I am responding to that obstacle as a threat, hopefully I at least am able to acknowledge I don't have to respond to all obstacles that way. There are things that I see as challenges as opposed to threats. The other powerful thing with this nice worksheet, with this tool, is you can actually use this as kind of a positive affirmation or self-affirmation tool. If you notice, hey, I am not really responding to this as a challenge, but I wish I did, using some of these statements as you think about the challenge, some of the positive ones, not necessarily the negative ones, using these statements can actually improve your challenge mindset. It can make you feel more in control of it. If you say something enough times, you will convince yourself it's true. So that's one simple activity you can do. The next one is even simpler. Get excited, exclamation point. Whether or not you're aware of this, this activity essentially relies on the fact that physiologically, anxiety and excitement manifest almost identically. When you're excited or nervous about something, you might get a little bit sweaty, your hands might get a little clammy, your heart starts beating a little bit faster. Your body responds to that the exact same way. So again, if you can tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. My body is excited and ready to deal with this challenge. That's going to help you take on a little bit more control in that situation, and that's going to help you feel a little bit more confident going into that challenge. Again, this one might not work for situations that are genuinely a threat. You don't need to tell yourself you feel excited that you're not sure how you're going to afford rent this month. This isn't for that situation. This is for the smaller things. This is for the things that kind of pile up on top of you. But we're going to do this together. So it's really simple. Just close your eyes in your mind. Think about that obstacle that you're dealing with. And then on the count of 3, we're all going to say out loud, I'm excited. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm excited. Nice. Thank you so much. I like the audience participation. I don't know if you all do, but I sure do. Another step you can take to adopt a little bit more of a challenge mindset is to review similar situations where you did succeed or where you did overcome. And I would even recommend doing this on paper. Not quite yet, Lauren. That's for a different one. Just jotting down here, this situation A is like situation B. Here's how I overcame in situation B. Here were things that helped me out. Here were things I learned from that situation. Just jotting down, again, it can help empower you to what's going on in that situation and help you kind of take a little bit more of a candid look of something in the context of other challenges. And the final step of adopting that challenge mindset is to really just acknowledge that the words you use are very important. And a lot of times we use language that disempowers us, that makes us feel less capable of dealing with that situation. So I would just genuinely, as a rule of thumb, recommend avoiding things like I can't, there's no way. Instead of I can't, I won't. If you're still not going to do whatever thing it was, I won't at least implies I have a choice in this and I'm not going to do that. So just being aware, there are phrases and statements that we're using to talk ourselves out of feeling empowered, of taking on that challenge mindset. Just something to keep in mind, a little food for thought. Stepping away from a challenge mindset for a moment and looking at our next idea, connectedness, or social connectedness specifically. The reason that this is so important for resiliency is, number one, human beings are social animals. If you put a person into isolation, they will develop mental illness. That's not a if this, then that. It's just flat out, yes. If you put somebody into isolation, they will develop a mental illness, because human beings, we need contact. We need to interact with one another. Another reason why being more connected, being more social increases resiliency is we have access to more resources. I only have what I have in life, but if I have a best friend, now I have access to twice as much stuff, twice as many ideas of how to conquer this situation. Sorry, making sure my notes match up. Dealing with a really complex situation, the more people you have to get advice from, the more likely you are to get an idea that's really going to help you move forward around this. This is actually even more important for women involved with First Breath and My Baby and Me, because as I understand it, bringing a new baby into the house is just kind of like setting off a bomb in the house. It's just stressful, it's exhausting, it throws everything into kind of chaos. If you can have a loved one, a family member, a friend, bring over meals so you don't have to worry about that one thing. Or come over and, watch the kid for an hour so you can get a nap. I understand naps are very important for new moms. And research does back this up completely. Individuals with meaningful relationships, or with more meaningful relationships, they report lower levels of stress. They report higher resiliency. So you ask, how do you improve social connectedness? A few of the suggestions I would have is, number one, focus on maintaining beneficial relationships. I'm sure we all have one or two people in our own lives, and we can think of people in our clients' lives that they have a relationship with this person, could be a family member, could be a friend, and it's really not helping them out. That relationship is doing them more harm than good. Now, I'm not saying you can totally cut off, family members and, sever all contact with them, but acknowledging that you don't have to work to strengthen that relationship if it's not making you a better person, if it's not making you feel better about yourself or do better in life. Just being aware, is this relationship good for me? Having that awareness, asking that question. And I've got 3 things. This take initiative actually should have been a full bullet in and of itself, because that's our activity that we're going to walk through for social connectedness. So I want everybody, please, take out your cellular device, your personal one preferably if you have that with you. I'm going to ask you to send a text message or Facebook message or whatever your messaging, or email if you would prefer to do that. You're going to send a message to somebody that you feel like is a beneficial relationship in your life. Just send them a nice message. It can be something as simple as, hey, this weird guy is telling me to send you a message. I hope you're having a good day. Preferably something more like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. Let's catch up soon. Anyone you want. I'll give you a couple minutes for this. And I know I'm probably setting myself up for challenges because everybody's going to start getting messages back. So if your phone chirps, that's okay, not a big deal. I set myself up for this, I acknowledge that. But the reason I asked you to do this as one large group is you need to take initiative. You need to actually actively build a practice of reaching out to people in your social circle and making sure you're connecting with them. So I would recommend, throw a reminder on your phone, throw up a quick alarm once a day or at least once a week. Send a message to someone that for no other purpose than just to try to connect with them and say hello. It's a simple thing to do. It's going to help strengthen your social connectedness. It's going to make you a more resilient person. All you have to do is send a message. That's usually fun anyway, right? Now this next activity, who are my teammates? Initially, this was who is on my superhero squad, but I thought that was a little more nerdier than probably everybody would like. This one's really simple. I want you to jot down the names of 5 people in your life. They can be friends, they can be family, they can be coworkers, just 5 people. And then next to each name, I want you to jot down one idea for how they could help you with this obstacle or challenging situation you're dealing with. Even if it's something as simple as they can listen to me vent about this. One way they can help you. Maybe they give really good advice. Now, as we wrap up this activity, we're not going to do any sharing on this particular one, but it's just something I want you to think of, because so often when we are dealing with obstacles or challenges in our own life, we immediately think this is something I have to solve myself, this is something I have to do alone, and really it's not the case. If a friend were to come to you and say, hey, I've got this thing I'm dealing with, is it okay if I just bounce some ideas off of you? Or is it okay if I get your advice on this? I don't think there's a person in this room that would say, nope, don't wanna deal with it. No, because again, human beings are social, we like to help one another. This last activity we're not going to walk through today, but just something to keep in mind to help strengthen those social connections, help build that resiliency, is just called a social media like-a-thon. It's really simple. You take out your phone or whatever device you're browsing social media on, and I don't know if you use Facebook or Instagram or MySpace or whatever your social media of choice is, and you go down your news feed and you press like next to, or smiley face or whatever the appropriate response is, next to every substantial post. Don't do the things that people are like, oh, I'm sharing this video from something else, but everything that actually comments on what's going on in a person's day-to-day life, hit like next to. Just spend 5 minutes, make it as far down your news feed as you can, and essentially what that does is it forces you to find out what's going on in people's life. And again, it's that really quick, really simple connection just to make sure you are reaching out. You are building a habit of staying socially connected. Make sense? And that one's easy. So, quick timeout, quick pause. I've thrown a whole bunch of ideas at you about adopting a challenge mindset, about staying socially connected or prioritizing social connections. I want to hear from you guys. How are you going to be able to discuss this with your clients? What's one idea that you're like, oh, I could bring up this. I could mention this. And I'm going to pass around microphone for this one.
I think a lot of times we'll talk to the client, and if they've done something successfully in the past, I'll say, do you think maybe you can bring some of those partners into this situation and see if they might help you out with that too? So finding out what their resources in the past have been and bringing them forward.
Excellent, thank you. Let's go 4 more ideas, because 5 is a nice round number.
I think sometimes people feel alone, so helping them identify who those people might be. Like they think, oh, I don't have anybody, but if you really look at the big picture, especially if you're connected with them, you can name people in their life that they may not think about.
And just to add to that is when they figure out who those people are, say, well, if you're having problems with thinking you're going to start smoking, call that person and talk to them, and long enough that'll get their mind off of it, just so they know who they can reach out to.
Definitely a good way to deal with a craving.
With regard to the challenge mindset, to just, since it seems like it can be so overwhelming, to just focus on small obstacles and see if you can get them motivated to be a challenge to, okay, let's get over not having a cigarette right away when I wake up in the morning, and then go through the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a big challenge and breaking it down to 20 tiny challenges. Because that one big thing might seem really overwhelming, but I can take on at least a few of these small ones today. At least one more idea. And I'm really good at standing awkwardly in silence, so I'll wait for it.
Well, using your book on support persons to help you quit smoking. And oftentimes you'll talk with clients and see what their partner thinks about quitting, and oftentimes their partner wants to cut down too. So you can talk about how you could, they maybe could talk to their partner about that.
Yeah, so acknowledging that the challenge or obstacle we're dealing with, there might be some other people in our family who are dealing with it too, other people who want to make a change around tobacco, and then it's something you're tackling together. Combine them, I like that. Challenge mindset together. Nice. Before we move on, I think I was just going to give a quick 4-minute recess. If anybody wants to use restroom or wants to just stretch, I know we just filled you with food. I know there is a few chips left. I just want to make sure that we keep people engaged for this last push. Okay. About 1 more minute. Okay, if people want to find their seat again, we'll probably get started. Final push. We'll get through it, guys. Okay, so we talked about adopting a challenge mindset. We talked about maintaining social connections as important steps to make ourselves more resilient. The next step we're going to talk about is being proactive. Proactivity, or having a proactive approach, is a very common characteristic of resilient people in that they tend to plan ahead for things that are likely to happen so that they're prepared and are aware of how to respond to them. In terms of First Breath and My Baby and Me, this means, planning for situations that are going to come up when you'll be tempted, when you will want to smoke or when you will want to drink. If you plan ahead for what's coming up, you are much more likely to be successful when it does happen. Being proactive means essentially making the decision in advance of what you're going to do to avoid that tobacco slip up or avoid that sip of alcohol. Adopting a proactive mindset can also help a person, I don't know if that one was me, I don't think it was. It can help a person remain feeling in control of a situation. Essentially, it helps you keep minor inconveniences from becoming major emergencies. It's, doing the little things like, making sure you take in your car to get an oil change and get its checkup so that there's no major emergency that's going to derail, a whole vacation for you. I'm not sure why everything's coming back to car travel for me today. Might be some underlying anxiety. Not sure why. But yes, finally, it helps you maintain that positive outlook. Because again, if you've already prepared for all the negative things that can happen, how can you help but feel positive? Either these negative things are going to happen and you're prepared for them, or they didn't happen and you were over-prepared and hey, things are going better than you thought they were. That's a good thing. So how do you become a more proactive person? I'm going to guess that you're probably more proactive than you realize you are right now. So what are some things we do already to prepare for the unexpected? And we can just shout them out. I bet you're doing more than you think. Yeah, have a rainy day account. Did anybody drive here today? Yeah? Did you wear a seatbelt? Yeah. That's something you do just in case you get in an accident. What else? What's that? Yeah, making sure you got a full tank of gas. My mom's thing was always, if her car goes below 1/3 of a tank, she wasn't that big. If it goes below 1/3 of a tank, she filled up the next chance she got. Just taking those small steps, you never have that, oh, I really ran out. Oh, I feel silly. What else? Does anybody have a smoke alarm in their house? That's something that you are doing to be proactive. In case there is a fire, you're prepared for it. So you can get your family out of the house safely. Essentially, I'm trying to make the point that we already do a lot of things to help avoid catastrophe. So we already have this mindset in place and ingrained a little bit. We just need to apply it to other situations to make ourselves feel even more in control. One of the things that a quick kind of mental exercise I like to do, and again, you can think about this in terms of the challenge that you're dealing with, is ask yourself, what's the worst way I could respond to this? Like, what's the most terrible thing that I could do in response to if this bad thing goes as bad as I think it will? Like, let me give you an example. Let's say hypothetically I lose my job. What's the worst thing I could do? I could turn to a life of crime. Start robbing banks or trains. That's still a thing, right? When you get that, what's the worst thing you could do? Ask yourself, what's the opposite of that? Instead of turning to a life of crime, I could turn to a life of service. So again, it's just a little mental exercise, something you can do, help yourself feel a little bit more proactive about this obstacle that you're dealing with. Another exercise to practice being a little bit more proactive is called short-term mapping. So Lauren, and I'm going to help her, we're going to pass out quick sheets of paper. It's literally just a plain sheet of paper. What I want you to do is to take 2 minutes, jot down what kind of challenges you're going to encounter in the next week. When are you going to be spread most thin? Essentially plan out, okay, looking at the next week, what do I need to be aware of? What do I need to prepare for? What are little reminders I want to have for myself? We're passing stuff out, so, oh, Lauren's already there. She already had everything counted? Oh. So 3 minutes, literally just jot down, what's your next week going to look like? This is just for yourself, so don't feel like it has to be super detailed. Going to give you 30 more seconds, and then we'll go to the next step of this. Okay, and time. Now, I want everybody to pick up that sheet of paper. No, literally pick it up. I want you to wait till I've finished giving instructions, then please follow through. So what you're going to do is crumple it into a ball and then throw it in my general direction. Yeah, go ahead. We planned out well. I was too far away for everyone to hit. Oh. She gets an extra pen. That's the only prize we have, right? So the reason I had you throw those away is not because this is a perfect plan that you mapped out, that it's going to solve all your problems and you're going to have the perfect next week. It's just because you should get in the habit of building in that proactive mindset, of sitting down, spending 2 minutes of just jotting out, okay, here are a couple things that are coming up. Did anybody, and again, you can just do a quick like nod or shake, preferably nodding. Did anybody have one thing that they thought of that they're like, oh, I'm glad I remembered X, Y, Z, and jotted that down? I got at least one nod. I'll take it. I'll take my one. So again, the purpose of this is literally just to adopt that, okay, I'm thinking about what might be coming up and how I'm gonna deal with that situation. Our final characteristic that falls within these resilient traits is being goal-oriented or growth-oriented. This is actually pretty similar to that being proactive, planning ahead. The difference between these two is, I feel like I'm causing a lot of feedback, and I'm not sure how I'm doing that. Oh, it's all this? Oh, I gotta move it up. Better? Worse? Better? We'll find out. So the difference between being goal-oriented and being proactive is essentially that being proactive is finding ways to avoid challenges or reduce their impact. Being goal or growth-oriented is finding kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, finding out what's going to be better as a result of this challenge. So it's not just about planning how you're going to address it, it's planning what am I going to get out of this. A few things that this does for you. Number one, it focuses on the future, the long-term view. And I want to show of hands for this one. Who wrote down for their obstacle, for their challenge that they're dealing with, who wrote down something that 10 years from now you will not remember even happened? Only one? Two? Three? A few more? Okay. So we can acknowledge there are some challenges that we're dealing with that in the long term, this is a nothing. This is something that it might help lead me towards something bigger, but I'm not going to remember this exact step. The other important piece of that being goal-oriented is, again, focusing on the benefits instead of the drawbacks. How am I going to be a better person as a result of this? How am I going to be a stronger person? How am I growing from this challenge? The other piece, and this is specific to resiliency research around this topic, is that active goals, as opposed to ability goals, are associated with much higher achievement in that face of a challenge. So having that, what am I going to do, instead of where am I going to be, if that makes sense. What are you actively going to do to help achieve this goal, instead of just what is the end goal that I'm hoping for. So this one's fairly simple as well. Couple small activities, and again, most of these are kind of mind questions or mental exercises you would do yourself, is when you are dealing with that challenge, asking yourself, how will I be better after this? Even writing out that question and trying to answer it can sometimes just be a powerful exercise. And also considering, what long-term goals does this bring me closer to? Yes, this might be a difficult thing to deal with, but this is getting me closer to XYZ, my ultimate goal, what I actually want for myself. Even something as simple as, this is going to make me a more patient person. I'm guessing everybody here has dealt with a difficult person that you're like, oh man, this is really good practice for dealing with other difficult people, but I wish I didn't have to, but that's what I'm getting out of this. Final exercise we're going to walk through today is a quick exercise called 3 more hours. So if your life included 3 extra hours, let's say hypothetically the moon somehow messed with the Earth's rotation or something, suddenly days are 27 hours long. What are you going to do with those extra 3 hours? Yeah, what would you work on? What would you want to do? I heard somebody say sleep. That absolutely can be one. Here are just a few kind of potential overall ideas. And seriously, I want you to just jot down a few ideas. If you had 3 more hours in your day, and you don't even have to spend it all doing one thing. Some people might be circling an idea. Some people might be jotting down a few words. I know it's a big responsibility. I just gave you 3 more hours of life every single day. It's a lot to deal with. And now next to those words that you jotted down or circled, essentially you've decided how you want to spend those extra 3 hours a day. I want you to write down what is the smallest, simplest, easiest, what's What's the smallest thing you could do, the smallest action you could take in the next 24 hours that would promote that same value in your life? And I'm talking, what's the smallest thing you can do? Just something, what's the starting point? Write that down. And no pressure. Okay, my arms were not waving there, so that one wasn't me. Does anybody have anything they really want to share that they just jotted down? No pressure on this one. That's okay. Because now we are going to have a little bit more pressure on this next question. So when talking about being proactive and when talking about being goal-oriented or growth-oriented, these are a little bit abstract of concepts, and these are a little bit, in some ways they feel a little bit hokey. So how do you currently, or based on some of the information shared today, how are you going to talk to your patients, your clients about this? Who's feeling brave?
That's okay. Like for me personally, I feel like resilience is already being discussed. It's making those small goals. I think somebody mentioned earlier, okay, I want to quit smoking, so I'm going to cut down 1 cigarette a day for a week. Or I want to increase my physical activity, so I'm going to walk 10 minutes 3 times a week, and then building on those.
Yeah. So we're already doing a good job setting some of those goals. How else?
I was actually just thinking about the 3-hour idea and how I want to ask my clients this just to see what they say, because I think I might be surprised, and it might just cue me in a little bit to what is really going on right now. So I think it's interesting.
And after they've already set their goals, you can help them make a list of, okay, I stopped smoking, I have X amount of money to spend on this, and they can work towards another goal of maybe purchasing something for the child that's being born.
Gotcha. So being a little bit proactive, figuring out where are those extra resources going to go. And that also kind of gives you a little bit of a carrot at the end of the... 2 more.
So just building on what some other people have said, when clients do identify maybe one small goal or action step or change that they could make to help them with deciding, how confident they are, or, letting them give voice to how confident they are in being able to do X, Y, and Z between now and the next time I see you, and affirming their confidence and empowering them.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, quick show of hands, and I'm thinking this is probably going to be unanimous. Who here is required to set goals with the clients and patients they work with? So almost everyone, if not everyone. And follow-up question to that, when those goals are set, do you feel, how do you feel about them? How do you react genuinely, is this something that you're like, yes, my clients are doing a great job on these goals, or do you feel like sometimes goals are set and progress is more difficult? I'm curious now.
I think it sometimes really depends on that person and who her support people are with her. I have someone in mind who, like, when she found out she was pregnant, she had already went from like a pack a day to a couple of cigarettes a day. And it was mainly because of her partner and her family being incredibly supportive. And so when I have someone like her, I am very confident that her goals will be achieved, unlike the ones who are like, really like, yeah, I want to make changes, but I don't know if I can. So I'm not always as confident that they're going to actually be able to make that goal.
Excellent. So the goal setting success maybe depends on the person as well. Gotcha. Okay. That was probably a whole can of worms that I was starting to open with that question. I acknowledge that now. I'm going to take a step back. So many microphones. That was the information I had to share with you today. I hope you found at least one or two pieces in there to either utilize in your own life, share with clients. We're all very resilient people, but we could all do a little bit more to make ourselves a little bit more resilient. And again, going way back to that chart, to either make our resilient zone a little bit bigger or to make those hills and valleys maybe a little bit less aggressive. I believe Lauren is trying to indicate that before you leave, if you would please provide to us your evaluation, as well as we did take that group photo, so we do actually need a model release, which actually should have been in everybody's folder as well. But yes, please make sure you give us those things before you go. I think there are some chips and cookies left maybe. Please take those as well. We do not need to eat those on our way back to the office. Anything else you wanted to add, Lauren? Yes, feel free to contact Lauren, and Lauren will also be reaching out to all of the First Breath coordinators in the next month to discuss those next steps with First Breath. Thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate it.